Hollywood has spent decades telling you who the Vikings were, and Hollywood, as usual, got almost everything wrong. You've seen the horned helmets, the savage raids, the bloodthirsty warriors charging out of longships while villages burn behind them. The real Vikings, they were farmers, poets, traders, and explorers. They had complex laws, surprisingly progressive social customs, and an obsession with personal hygiene that would have put most of medieval Europe to shame. So today, we're ditching the myth and digging into how Vikings actually lived. First, let's clear something up. Viking wasn't really an ethnic identity. It was more of a job description. The word vikingar in Old Norse referred specifically to someone who went on a sea raid or voyage. Most Scandinavians during the Viking Age never went raiding at all. They stayed home, tended their farms, raised families, and traded with their neighbors. The people we call Vikings came primarily from what is now Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Each region had its own patterns of expansion. The Norwegians pushed west to Iceland, Greenland, and eventually North America, nearly 500 years before Columbus. The Danes raided and settled in England and France. The Swedes, known as the Varangians, traveled east down the rivers of modern-day Russia, trading with Byzantium and the Islamic world as far as Baghdad. So when we talk about the Vikings, we're really talking about a diverse seafaring culture spread across centuries and thousands of miles. Keep that in mind. For the vast majority of Norse people, daily life revolved around the farm. The typical Viking home was a longhouse, a long rectangular building constructed from timber, turf, or stone, depending on what was available locally. In Iceland, where trees were scarce, settlers built almost entirely from turf, creating homes that were naturally insulated against brutal winters. Inside, the longhouse was one large communal space. A central hearth ran down the middle, providing heat and light. The smoke drifted up and out through a hole in the roof, no chimney, so interiors were often sooty and dim. Along the walls were raised platforms that served as benches during the day and beds at night. Animals were sometimes kept in an attached byre at one end of the building, which sounds unpleasant, but their body heat helped warm the space during Scandinavian winters. The Norse diet was practical and seasonal. Staples included rye and barley bread, porridge, dried and salted fish, game, dairy, and wild berries. They brewed ale and mead, which is a fermented honey drink, and these were consumed daily, partly because water sources weren't always safe. Feasting was a major cultural event, tied to seasonal celebrations and religious ceremonies. A good host was expected to be generous with food and drink. Stinginess was considered a genuine moral failing. And about that hygiene thing, this one surprises people. Archaeological finds across Scandinavia include combs, tweezers, ear scoops, and razors. The Norse bathed at least once a week, usually on Saturdays. The Old Norse word lagadaga, the origin of the English Saturday, literally means washing day. By contrast, many medieval chroniclers noted that Vikings seemed almost obsessively clean compared to their English and French contemporaries. Norse society was divided into three broad classes. At the top were the jarls, the nobility, wealthy landowners, and chieftains who commanded loyalty and resources. Below them were the carls, free farmers and craftspeople who made up the majority of the population. At the bottom were the thralls, enslaved people, often captured during raids or born into slavery. Slavery was a real and troubling part of Viking society. Thralls performed the heaviest labor and had almost no legal rights. However, it was also possible to buy one's freedom, and thralls who were freed became a class known as leisingi. The Norse legal system was sophisticated and largely oral. Laws were memorized and recited publicly at the Thing, an assembly where free men gathered to settle disputes, make decisions, and pass judgments. The Thing was a cornerstone of Norse civic life. Iceland's Althing, established in 930 AD, is considered one of the oldest functioning parliaments in the world. What might surprise modern audiences is the legal status of Norse women. Compared to most of the medieval world, Scandinavian women had significant rights. A woman could own property, request a divorce, and reclaim her dowry if a marriage ended. She managed the household, a serious economic responsibility, and held the keys to the home as a literal symbol of her authority. Runestones erected by women in memory of their husbands and sons are common throughout Scandinavia. These were not women erased from public life. The Norse were polytheistic, worshipping a pantheon of gods known primarily through later texts like the Prose Edda and Poetic Edda, written down in Iceland during the 13th century, well after the Viking Age had ended. The gods most people know, Odin, Thor, Freyr, Loki, were central figures in a complex cosmology that described 9 interconnected worlds held together by the world tree Yggdrasil. Odin, the All-Father, was associated with wisdom, war, death, and poetry. He sacrificed his eye for knowledge and hung himself from Yggdrasil for 9 days to gain the secret of the runes. Thor, his son, was the protector of humanity, the god of thunder and storms. His hammer, Mjolnir, was the most popular religious symbol of the age, Norse equivalent to a cross. Religious practice involved animal sacrifice, feasting, and offerings at temples or sacred natural sites. Professional religious practitioners existed, but ordinary farmers also maintained household shrines and conducted private rituals. The Norse concept of fate, shaped by the 3 Norns who wove the threads of destiny, permeated their worldview. A heroic death in battle was celebrated, not just for the glory, but because it was understood to be part of a larger cosmic story. The Viking Age ended in part because of the gradual Christianization of Scandinavia. This happened slowly and unevenly, often through political pressure from Christian kings. Many Norse people held dual beliefs for generations, wearing Mjolnir pendants alongside Christian crosses, hedging their bets with the divine. If there's one thing the Vikings deserve full credit for, it's seamanship. Their longships were engineering masterpieces, shallow drafted enough to navigate rivers and beaches, symmetrical enough to reverse direction without turning around, and flexible enough in design to absorb ocean waves rather than fight them. With no compass, Norse navigators used the sun, stars, wave patterns, bird behavior, and a device called a sun compass to cross open ocean with remarkable accuracy. This technology enabled journeys that reshaped the world. In 986 AD, Bjarni Herjolfsson reportedly sighted North America after being blown off course. Leif Erikson followed up around 1000 AD, establishing a settlement at Lance or Meadows in what is now Newfoundland, Canada. This was confirmed by archaeology in the 1960s. The Norse reached the Americas 5 centuries before Columbus, and 5 centuries before they would be remembered for doing so. Trade was equally important. Norse merchants established networks stretching from Greenland to Constantinople. They traded furs, amber, walrus ivory, and enslaved people for silver, silk, spices, and wine. The city of Dublin was founded by Norse settlers. Kyiv, in modern Ukraine, was ruled by the Varangian Rus dynasty, from whom Russia takes its name. So here's the Vikings as they actually were: farmers who could fight, traders who could raid, explorers who crossed an ocean and left almost no trace. People with complex beliefs, real legal systems, and a rich literary tradition that produced sagas still read today. They weren't the horned helmet savages of the movies, though they certainly had a violent side. They were something more interesting, more human, and honestly more impressive than the myth gives them credit for. If you want to go deeper, the sagas themselves are an incredible read. Njal Saga and the Vinland sagas are great starting points, and if this video taught you something you didn't expect, make sure to subscribe. There's a lot more history to discover. Till next time,